afternoon. My name is Bonnie, and I will be your conference operator today. At this time, I would like to welcome everyone to the C.A. Wiley APM Global User Community Webcast. All lines have been placed on mute to prevent any background noise. After the speaker's remarks, there will be a question-and-answer session. If you would like to ask a question during this time, simply press star, then the number 1 on your telephone keypad. If you would like to withdraw your question, press the pound key. Thank you. I would now like to turn the conference over to Mr. Manish Parikh. Please go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to all the members. My name is Manish Parikh. I'm the board president for the C.A. Wiley APM Global User Community Webcast. Wanted to welcome to everyone to the 2013 year. Happy New Year, and I hope you guys all had a great holiday season. And just a couple of announcements that I wanted to make. We have decided to go ahead and consolidate our webcast sessions to one session per month instead of the 2 that we've been doing for the past how many years. So in lieu of just making it easier for the speakers as well as participation from others, so we are going to schedule starting February, which is our next webcast on the 21st. We will be scheduling the webcast at 11 a.m. on the same third Thursday of every month. So just please make a note of that, and you will also see that during your invites when we send out the communication through the community website. So to get started for today's webcast, today we're going to discuss a joint customer case study with CA and Netuitive. And to talk about that, I wanted to introduce Graham Gillen. He is the product marketing director for Netuitive, and he will further go into today's webcast and introduce the presenters. Graham?
Thank you, Manish. Hello, everyone. My name is Graham Gillen. I'm the Product Marketing Director and CA Product Partner Manager for Netuitive. First, I'd like to thank Mary Greening and the officers of the CA APM user community for letting us present today with one of our major joint customers. And what we hope to do is engage you today with a case study showing how a specialized third-party analytics tool like Netuitive can complement the performance management suite offered by CA to ensure and even improve the performance of critical applications like point-of-sale systems. So for that, for our presenters today, we have Jay Patel from Netuitive and Amy Hansen representing our customer. Jay's a senior systems engineer at Netuitive who has over 12 years experience working with various APM tools and strategies, and he's one of the best SEs at Netuitive. Amy is the manager of systems engineering and production control responsible for the point-of-sale system at the customer that you'll be hearing about today. And it's a real privilege to have Amy because it's often very hard to jump through legal hoops to have a customer present with us today. And while we can't officially name the company, I think she'll be very open to questions and she'll answer as much as she can. And hopefully you'll understand if she has to answer with a polite no comment, on occasion. So with that, I'll simply hand it off to Jay and Amy, and thank you all for attending today.
Jay Patel. As Graham mentioned, I'm the systems engineer at Netuitive, and we have Amy who will speak just a little bit later on this session as well. Just to make sure, the invite that was sent out named this session as a customer success story. And as Amy and I were preparing for this session, we realized that the title is a little bit misleading. So we want to just preface this session by saying this is more of a case study as opposed to a success story. The topics that we're recovering had led to a number of conversations with the on-site CA team and the internal application support teams. The hope here is that you'll also find what we're presenting thought-provoking, and we invite you to try to make this as interactive as possible by asking questions. So with that, I'm going to get started by way of agenda.
Jay, could you speak up a little bit? It's very difficult to hear you.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me any better? Can you hear me now?
Yes, as loud as you can.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Okay. I'm going to try to operate this thing with one hand. Here we go. All right. So by way of agenda, what I want to first cover off is that this customer environment is both a business and an IT landscape. So they use IT as a competitive differentiator against their competitors. Right? The customer's interest and motivation.
Hey, Jay, I'm sorry. You're kind of fading away. So I don't know if you can increase any settings on your phone or get closer to the mouthpiece because we can barely hear you.
Okay, hold on. Let me try it. Is that any better?
Not really.
No.
You just have to either talk really loud.
All right, give me 1 second then. I'll try a couple of things here. Okay, how's that? Is that any better? Can you guys hear me now?
It's about the same.
Oh, actually, hold on. Let's do this. Okay, how's that? Are we still the same?
I think so. I mean, I don't know for the rest of the users, but for me, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll speak directly into the mic. Hopefully this is a little bit better.
There you go. That's better. Yeah, just speak. Whatever you did, just continue doing that.
Okay, excellent. Sounds good. Appreciate that. Thanks for the feedback,
Thanks.
guys. All right, so I'm going to get going with this again. So by way of agenda, I want to talk briefly about the IT in the business landscape. Again, this is a competitive differentiation system. It is robust. It is fault tolerant. It's already at 3 nines of availability. What we're talking about today is trying to get to that whole 4 nines of availability. We'll go into why. Amy's going to go into why this particular customer wanted, or what the motivations were to investigate predictive analytics, and what they had to start with. And also, I'm going to go through a semi-detailed explanation of the CA Netuitive technology integrations. So there are several in play. This is a large environment, and why we chose to do the ones we did, and what kind of data we were able to pull out. So with all that in place, what we then are going to do is go through a case study, which is what Netuitive refers to as a trusted incident that occurred late 2012 during the retail freeze. And so this happened, it's one of those situations where the code hasn't changed, nothing's really gone on the system, everything's supposed to be business as usual, and something's gone wrong. So with that, I'm going to get started. All right, so a little bit about the customer. So this is one of the largest telecom providers in North America. And they have over 2,200 retail stores spread out across North America. And at each one of these stores, there's a number of sales reps. And these sales reps, in order to provision a new phone or to give somebody a new phone plan or to hand out a device, need to have access to these underlying IT systems, the transactions, in order to get that customer from through that whole purchasing endeavor. So, excuse me. One of the things that we noted when we started this thing is one of the executives, at least one of the executives, believed that failures in the IT system had a direct impact on the sales in the stores, but they couldn't prove this. And we'll talk about that specifically in the use case as well. The client has 4 geographically dispersed areas, each of which is serviced by 72 JVMs. So you can imagine the size of the CA componentry and all of the sort of technical bits and pieces that are in and around or that make up this environment. Each one of these JVMs runs the same several point-of-sale application in failover. So failover for redundancy and for scalability. They have repeated several applications on each one of these JVMs. So while this is very fault tolerant, and the environment does introduce a lot of challenges when it comes to monitoring. So the CA technologies that have been chosen for most of the infrastructure basic tools of choice, right? So for the domain guys that are doing the
hey, I'm sorry, Jay, there is some kind of a humming noise coming in the background.
Are you still getting it?
It's gone now.
Okay. All right. Sorry for the audio problems, people. We'll try to deal with them as we go. All right. So as I was saying, the CA tools that are in play here are still the tools of choice for the domain experts, right? So what we're talking about here is an overlay on top of the data that's being collected. It doesn't require any changes to the monitoring landscape as it stands before Netuitive or after Netuitive. It's absolutely just using and taking advantage of the data that's already available. So last year, this customer who prides themselves as being as a best-of-breed provider, they're good at this. They're very sophisticated in their implementation, but they needed to improve it just to keep themselves as one of the top-notch providers. So I'll let Amy speak to the initiatives that led them towards investigating predictive analytics.
Hi,
Amy, are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
Again.
Okay, thanks. Hi, my name is Amy Hansen. As previously mentioned, I'm a manager for production control for the point-of-sale applications. So I'm responsible for monitoring all of our applications and the performance of them that support all of our stores. So to get into our motivation for integrating Netuitive with Interscope, the main driver that was our focus on the customer. We put our customers first by constantly monitoring our systems and getting ahead of the issues. So we looked at Netuitive to provide the holistic view that's going to incorporate all of our system statistics with our revenue so we can see how any kind of system would impact our bottom line. Our availability targets have gone up, so we were looking for a tool to do the analytics on all of our data to help meet these higher numbers. We need to be able to work on issues proactively before the customer complains. So Netuitive provided the analytics to learn what is normal and to find the anomalies. This is going to free us from setting hard thresholds. So for us, thresholds do not work well because we have thousands of metrics. It would be physically impossible to set a threshold for each one. Plus, we wanted the analytics to consider our store traffic, how Monday morning traffic is much different than a Saturday afternoon. And finally, we were hoping this integration would provide us with that important high confidence alert ahead of a customer impacting failure. So currently, we get so many alerts every day from all of our other tools, and sometimes an important alert would get lost in all the noise. So that was our motivation, and I'll turn it back to Jay now to go over how Netuitive was implemented.
Thanks, Amy. All right, so with that in the back of your heads, one of the things that make up the complexity of this environment is that the transactions traverse a large number of technologies, and each of them has their own unique characteristics. So what you're seeing here are all of the different, what we consider data sources. From a Netuitive perspective, what's a data source? But from a CA perspective, all the technologies that you guys bring to bear in order to manage and monitor this environment. So we have, the Interscope that's getting the APM metrics right from the JVMs themselves. And then we have the CEM tool that's bringing in the customer experience data about the transactions that are of critical importance. We also had ADA data available, and the ADA data gives us, the entire sort of network scope, right? So all of the sort of low-lying communication type information. And then CTG, which is the KIX transaction gateway, which is a big participant in this particular use case, or case study, but it's just one of the components that's being monitored here, right? Has very much equal value with all of these things. And then finally, what we did was we brought in data, the BAM data, or the business activity data, which is metrics like total sales, right, or sales volume in the last 5 minutes, or how many devices have we sold in the last 5 minutes. That type of information is what I mean by PAM. And then finally, we also integrated some log file data, some data that was being logged in these T4-R formatted files. And the reason we did that is partially because it represents the critical path of these transactions, and as well to just bring a end-to-end picture to this environment. So with that, I'm going to discuss all of these, or the overlay that Netuitive brings by way of a case study. So this case study, what you're seeing on the chart here is the actual report of something going wrong in this environment happened at 2:22 or 14:22, so sometime in the afternoon. Right. This is the first trouble ticket as it was opened when the client got it. I'm going to go a little bit back in time here to tell you what happened and why this is, again, a case study and not a success story, right? So what happened in this situation was Netuitive started to see anomalous behavior at 11:55, right? So nothing was actually wrong with the environment, right? No customers were complaining. None of the systems were actually, causing any grief. They weren't slowing down or stopped or down or anything. We just noticed anomalous behavior. And in this particular case, that anomalous behavior was an uptick in the number of requests that were being processed, right? So it was historically the highest value that we had seen on this particular day, at this time of day, in this scenario. And that, to Netuitive, was not business as usual, right? And so with that not business as usual, we started to put warning alerts out, right? So not critical alerts, just warning alerts. At around 2:10, so a couple hours later, what ends up happening is not only are we getting this high volume of transactions, we also started to see that the mainframe components started to slow down, right? So the response time back for that particular component, not to the end user yet, but from that particular component, started to degrade significantly, right? And that's when we started to alarm, saying, okay, listen, something's going wrong with this environment. Not only is it not business as usual, but a key indicator, the response time from the mainframe, is starting to go into a zone which is considered not good. So with that, one of the things that we were able to produce, and if you look at this screenshot, one of the things you'll see is it's got that typical red, yellow, green aspect, right? Red's bad, yellow is okay, but something's gone wrong, and green obviously is good. In this particular case, using all of that, that rich data that we're getting from all of the different CA tools, we were able to put it into a single pane of glass, which represented the entire scope of the application. So from left to right, what you're seeing here is the client-side queues, right? So this is the JVM side of messages that are being put onto the queuing environment. The back-end components are all of the web services, JDBC calls, things that are the meat and potatoes of the application itself. From the front-end perspective, we see the struct actions, right? So that's the Java execution as it's happening. The JSPs represent the actual visualization layer or presentation layer of this application. We also have the application servers. Now you're seeing one box there. That's actually a representation of the entire cluster of servers. So that's all 72 of the JVMs, right? So important to note, they're still green, right? All the JVMs are fine in this situation. We then see the sales data, right? So this is the data that's coming in from the BAM collection. This data is actually being pulled in via a file drop that's provided by the business, right? So this is a completely different group other than the IT for this organization who said, wow, this is kind of cool. Let's provide you with a data feed that tells you how many phones have we sold, how much in total sales dollars do we have going on in this last 5 minutes. So that was a pretty cool piece of kit to be able to integrate. As well, we have, this is where you can see the red on the CTG, or the KIX transaction gateway, right? So this is the gateway to the mainframe. So very easily, without having specific domain knowledge about mainframes or about what transactions actually do, you can, as a first-level support person, say, aha, I think there's a problem, possibly with this little JSP here, but more likely with the CTG gateway, right? So the mainframe. And as it turns out, as we dig in a little further here, that was the case. This is, again, a representation. What you're seeing with the green bar is if you were just looking at just the mainframe's performance in isolation, you would be able to do, if you had dynamic baselining enabled, the green bar, right? One standard deviation away from its typical normal behavior as a metric, given how it performed yesterday and the time, last week, and at this particular time of day over the last two, let's say, months. With the blue bar that you're seeing here, one of the things that Netuitive does, this is somewhat unique to Netuitive, is the idea of multivariable correlation. And what the blue bar represents is how this particular metric, in this case it's the mainframe's total response or total transaction throughput, behaves with respect to the other metrics that we're watching. Right? So this uses multivariate correlation to determine where this particular metric should be, because it moves and behaves very similar to some of the other metrics that we're also watching. Now, when we noticed that that throughput got hit historical highs, I just got a note that I'm getting quiet again. Sorry about that. What we noticed with when we saw that historical high is we dropped what we consider a health number. Now, a health number helps that view that you saw earlier with the red, yellow, greens. It basically dropped the health number down to about 85% or 85. Right? So it's not that bad, but we're noticing that something's up with this thing. When we start to see the average response time or the latency, skyrocket on this particular resource, that's when we drop the health down to near zero. Right? So when both of these things were happening, that's when we absolutely started alarming. So this was around 2 o'clock or 2:15 that you're seeing the health drop to zero. Prior to that, the health was about 85% for a couple hours. Okay? I'm just going to continue on here. One of the things to note about that is it's considered just a degradation, right? So this is the early warning. The application itself, I'm going to go to the next slide here. The application itself at that point in time at 11:55 had not seen any kind of front-end degradation, right? So the CEM transactions at 11:55 were doing fine, and rightfully so, right? They were absolutely executing well within their, the tolerance bands, or well within the thresholds that were set for it. As well, the web clients, they were behaving fine as well. Now at around 2:10 and 2:30, that's when you start to see that cascade effect, right? So one of the things I'd like to sort of try to impart here is if you're looking at this thing at 2:10, all you see is, the JVMs are all lit up and they're slow. The CEM is reporting that transactions are going slow. The front-end componentry, the intrascope alarms are all, the bells and whistles are going off. You've also got that the mainframe, the CTG gateway, showing that, hey, I'm not being able to respond in time. So it's really difficult at 2:15 to figure out what's going on because everything's going wrong, right? So what happened was, in this particular situation, the early warning was given off that, hey, there's a good chance that this has something to do with the mainframe because that's what started this whole thing off, at 11:55. So that's the type of thing that we're working on with this customer now, with Amy, is to understand when we see, I'm just going to go to my next slide here. Actually, I'm going to come back to that one in a bit. When we see this warning alert, right, do we have enough information, or is this enough of a trigger to be able to say, yes, let's go work on this and try to solve this problem? The reason why we want to do that with this particular client is that at if you think about it, 2:22 to 3:02, it's about a 40-minute time span here, right? So these guys are the customer's really good. They're very, very good with the forensic tools that they have in place at solving these problems. It's a matter of getting that warning to them earlier, right? If you can imagine, if we could act on this outage earlier, if we could have acted on it at 11:55, we could actually resolve that well before that outage ever occurs, right? So these are the types of things that we're working on now and what we call operational adoption. That's the operational adoption phase, which is what we're at now. We're entering knowledge base entries into the Netuitive tool that say, hey, you know what, when we do see anomalous behavior like this, let's get, the guys that are looking into the CTG gateway to focus on their tool and start looking at this and explain this to me. I don't have an outage yet, but let me know, tell me what this is all about. All right, I'm going to go back one slide. One of the things that we were able to do when we looked at all of that data across all of those different domains and coupled it with the sales data that we're getting from the business side, we were actually able to directly correlate, and this is mathematically correlated, the effect that this particular response time, the CTG gateway response time, you can see when it started to skyrocket here, and its effect on, or its drop, the effect it had on sales. What is this? The sales amount gross. So, roughly estimating, you can see that there's a drop in the number of sales here, but when you put it side by side with these bands that tell you, hey, my response time should have been in this range and it was way up here, you can have a direct correlated effect between the business that you're serving and the IT that's trying to keep this thing as close to up as possible. So with that, this is, I just want to reiterate one last thing. The concept here is to be able to use all of that data, all that cross-domain stuff, all the data that we're already collecting, right? So it didn't require any changes to the CA implementation that was already here. This was absolutely just taking those feeds from the MOM, bringing it into Netuitive, and just doing historical and in near real-time analysis on that exact same data that's already being pulled in. And I think with that, I am done my presentation part. Amy, did you have anything to add?
No, I didn't have anything to add, thanks.
All right, excellent. So I guess we could open it up to questions if anybody has them. I see that there's you can do it two ways. I think it's *1, or you can click on the little QA icon in the window.
So, Jay, are you able to read the Q&A on the presentation?
Yes, I'm seeing some of them coming in now. Where did it go?
If not, I can read them out to you.
If you don't mind, can you read them out to me? That way
Sure.
everybody can listen in.
There is a question from Tom Mack. Is this the first time you were able to expose business metrics alongside IT metrics?
I will, let's ask Amy. I got here just for the Netuitive stuff. So, Amy, have you seen that one before?
This is the first time we've done that. I mean, we have daily reports, but this is the first time we could see them together in any kind of dashboard real time.
And he has a follow-up. Thanks, Amy. How useful is this information to IT support versus providing executive visibility?
Well, for IT support, I mean, it doesn't help us find the root cause, but definitely helps us understand the scope of the problem. But it's absolutely that, the executives are very interested in that data.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Sifte Faruqi, but it looks like he retracted it. Okay, sorry. That's all we have on the Q&A. Like Jay said, if you have a question, just
Bonnie,
Bonnie,
can you open up the line?
To ask a question, press *1. We do have a question from Oza Wahab of Bank of America.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes, we can. Absolutely.
Okay, so I see that system works well with problems that are progressive, but does it really approach the problems that come instantaneously? Many of our problems are like instantaneous, boom, and everything crashes. For example, there is a network problem between the JVMs and the backends, or the application installed faulty code with a leak in it, and the leak is very fast. Does Netuitive help in that direction?
So if somebody steps over a network cable and it's just down, it's not we're not going to be able to predict something like that, right? But in situations, what we've generally found is that when you have those instantaneous type outages, there's actually some sort of leading indicator usually. Maybe it's some type of in this case, actually this was one of them. Before having visibility into the CTG gateway, where they would see this problem was here on the client-side queues and on the server-side queues. So the mainframe would be in a position where it was almost down, or it was very slowly consuming the messages, and those queues would just almost within a minute would fill up, right? That's what we heard originally, was that these queues would just fill up, and it was an instant problem. What happened was when we started to look at the behavior on the mainframe, there's certain things that happen, towards the end of a month, if somebody decides to run a year-end report, and then on the system, which happens to be, it requires that those messages be pulled off in milliseconds or microseconds. That slight deviation or that slight workload increase are usually leading indicators to these things. Right, so you're absolutely right. If it's an instantaneous problem and we don't have some sort of indicator that can get there, no, we're not going to help you, right? But we've always been able to find, I would say that 95% of the time, throughout our customer base, have been able to find at least some sense of anomaly in the environment, which precludes those instantaneous outages.
If the leak is slow, would you be able to detect it?
It depends on how slow, right? So if the leak is very, very slow and people aren't paying attention, one of the things that Netuitive does that it does is it learns behavior, right? So it automatically learns its behavior. So if this thing is very, very slow and Netuitive is just kind of saying, oh, well, that's normal, that's normal, that's normal, it can potentially just go all the way to a failure. But you can always short-circuit that. The solution has the ability to put SLOs in. So if you want to go back to, a manual threshold, you can always put a top-end manual threshold in to stop that from happening. We actually had a case, Amy, can I talk to that memory leak one that we had just a little while ago?
Sure.
I didn't get it. Was that a yes or no?
Yes, you can talk about that.
Okay. All right. So one of the ones, once we had this installed and we were watching all of the data that was actually coming from Interscope, one of the metrics that we were getting on the Java virtual machines was the GC heap in use, I think it was, or GC heap. And what we found there was every so often a machine would just, reset itself. It had a normal pattern of GC usage, right, where it would just scale up, scale up, scale up, and then drop down to 20% memory, and then it would go up and up and up to 85%, and then it would drop back down to 20%, which is that sawtooth pattern that you get for garbage collection. Absolutely normal behavior for a Java virtual machine. But every so often it would just reset itself, right? It would just do something. So what we did as part of this whole operational adoption is one of Amy's team members went out and started investigating this. So, well, why is this happening at random, right? So we went back to the developers and the operational support team, actually, for this, and they said, well, yeah, this is a known issue. It's because we're dependent on a particular JDBC driver version to the back end, and there's a known bug in it, but we can't go to a new version because that breaks other parts of the code. So what we're doing instead is just rebooting the box every, I think it was a scheduled reboot every week and a half or 2 weeks, unless they were busy, right, or unless they were expecting something in this environment, in which case they would just reboot it preemptively. So those are the kinds of things we absolutely can, dig out of an environment. So, sorry, that was a long-winded of an answer.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And to ask a question, press star 1. Our next question comes from Sifty Faruqi of Fiserv.
In the Netuitive, you have mentioned the client-side queues, backends, and I'm looking the CEM transaction set. Why is so small? You can compensate more data in the CEM as compared to the Interscope, the front end, and the JSPs, or JVM's behavior. So why is not taking a lot of information from CEM in this tool, Netuitive?
Oh, that is a very good observation. Somebody's been paying attention. So actually, what you're seeing here, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. Probably not. The CEM transaction set. I didn't explain this properly. What that actually is a roll-up of all of the CEM transactions. In that box, if you were to click on it, the little yellow box labeled CEM transaction sets, you actually see about 100 or so transactions, which this customer found extremely, that's what they consider their critical transactions.
Good.
So you're right, there is a lot more. So each one of these boxes that you're seeing here has an entire load balance cluster underneath it, right? So when we look at, if I look at the application servers, if I was to click on that one little box there, the green one, that actually opens up to 72 separate JVMs, which roll up and aggregate their data to this view, right? So this is, a view that represents, you can click down into it for more isolation as needed.
Thank you.
At this time, there are no further questions.
Thank you, Bonnie. I have some on the Q&A, Jay. This question is from Siva Lingala. He asked, so the problem happened at 11:55 a.m. Could it not be captured by Wiley Mog threshold setting without analytics?
All right, so this is, so actually, if you just set threshold alerts for, let's say, response time, then what you would end up seeing is at 2:10, you would absolutely be informed, right? Because this spike that happens here is well above the threshold. And they were, right, Amy? At 2:10, there were alarms all over the place.
Right. Yeah, all of our systems alerted at 2:10. The interesting thing is CTG is not our system. It's actually a different application. So we don't monitor that. This is the first time we have visibility to CTG.
Right. So to answer that question as best as I can, yes, that would have alarmed at 2:10. But at 11:55, the only behavior the only reason that Netuitive alarmed is because this particular component, this mainframe, CTG gateway, had not seen volumes like this at this time of day before, right? So this was just strange behavior, right? Nothing was wrong. The application was running fine. All of the customers were doing their transactions all the way up until 2:10. They were absolutely doing everything as business as usual, except for the fact about this increased transaction throughput, the increased transaction throughput. That's all that's all they could see at that time. Right. So this is actually a good question because this represents the fundamental difference between when you're just monitoring and when you're doing analytics, right? So with the analytics, this uses that time series, what Amy calls the rhythm. They've established and know the rhythm of how this environment works, right? When it deviates from that rhythm, they've now got the discipline put in place to have it, the Amy's team actually has the discipline to say, if something goes outside of the rhythm, we're looking at it, right? We're going to be on top of this, right? We're not waiting for things to go wrong. It's just outside of its rhythm.
Thanks, Jay. The next question is from Sasi Kumar. Is Intuitive able to assimilate the log file errors as well?
So the errors, this is an interesting one, right? What we like is metric data, right? I like to know the value of something. I don't as much appreciate the event, right? Because if we've got error events, then something's interpreted that something's gone wrong already, right? What I'm trying to do is establish rhythm. Now, what we do with event data is, and I don't have a screen shot of that in this presentation, but we put a timeline and we just stick the event data on there. So if somebody takes a virtual machine snapshot and logs that, I'll put that in my event. If an exception occurred on a particular JVM and I've got a stack trace, I'll put that on my timeline. But I don't correlate that data. I don't correlate that event data the way I correlate all of the metric data that we're getting from like Interscope, right? Interscope tells me my average response time is 12 milliseconds, and 5 minutes from now, my average response time is 14 milliseconds. I like that data much better than, I just had, an error occur on the system.
That's all the questions that are listed on the Q&A. Are there any further questions?
We do have another question from Siddhi Faruqi of Fiserv.
It's very interesting use case. The only last question in my mind, Netuitive. How we configure Netuitive with our APM and CM system, and we have a Spectrum, we have other tools, So is it kind of conjunction? Is it need a lot of configuration, or is compatible with this, or we have to do a lot of changes?
So I'll answer two parts of that, and Amy had a good answer to this question earlier, which I'll let her answer that, the third part of this. So with the Spectrum, with the, what did you say, the CEM, CTG, and Interscope, no changes required. We'll use the CL workstation command from what we call our remote collector to go query the MOM and get the data that you're already collecting. Okay. I like ART, average response time, and RPI metrics. Those are my minimums. But anything else, this particular client pulled in JVM heap usage, we can pull that data in as well. So from that perspective, the integration's absolutely possible, and pulling the data does not require changes. But Amy, this was similar to the question this morning. How do you feel about how easy it is to get the stuff integrated?
So we've had Jay and his colleague John on site for a few months to help us with the configuration. Getting the data into Netuitive was not difficult, but the configuration of all this consolidation and grouping that they had to do, and they call them the service models, that did take quite a bit of work. But I believe once it's set up, the maintenance of that will not be much work unless the architecture changes or we bring in new tools again. But there is quite a bit of configuration to get these models set up, to get your correlations set up so that they're useful.
Thank you.
All right, excellent. And does anybody else have any other questions? These have actually been very good questions, very sophisticated. I appreciate that you guys were paying attention.
Jay, I think Sasi Kumar had another question. I don't know if he already asked you that. Is Intuitive capable of analyzing all the metrics available from APM additional components, such as metrics from DB Insight Lite, Workday MQ, Workday Power Pack, etc., or just a known set of metrics like JSP, servlets, JVM, heap data only?
So out of the box, we'll pull in those JSPs and stuff like that. We have integrations with, again, the CA stuff. We've got a very robust integration. That's easy. When we started tackling this OMQ stuff, we had no clue what type of metrics that we had available. And, it took, I would say, probably about a week or less to develop an integration. This data is actually coming from log files. So we have this thing called Integration Studio, and you can pretty much pull in data from, there's an HTTP way of, you can deliver a log file via HTTP. You can deliver it as a file drop. You can deliver it as an SFTP log, SNMP, anything you want. We have a way of consuming it, and these integrations, they don't take that long. Now, one of the things that Amy mentioned is, you got to just kind of know this, is that this pattern, this is what Netuitive really likes, this sine wave type of a pattern, right? The concept of being able to see a rhythm to what's going on. So depending on the metrics, we can pull them in, but we have to model them in a way that, we can establish some sense of a pattern to them, right? What we don't want is something that's completely jittery, that's completely, up and down all the time, because what ends up happening is we just alarm all the time, right? We don't have any sense of how this thing behaves, right? So does that answer the question?
I hope so. I don't have any more on the Q&A, so unless Bonnie has anyone that's chiming in.
There are no further questions at this time.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank Jay and Graham and Amy for giving their time at this point and, providing insight into this case study. I really appreciate it. Thank you, guys. Currently, I wanted to take a survey from the users. If you can take a look at the screen. We are trying to get an idea and thinking about doing a community event, probably February, it looks like, and we kind of want to get an idea of, preference as far as geographical location and whatnot. We took this poll early in our morning session, and we got some polls there, and I think over there Chicago was the favorite. So we kind of want to get an idea from you guys to see if you were to hold an event where you could come interact with different either community members or consultants or what have you. What would you prefer? So please, if we can do that. It's a good way to network within the community as well. Okay. So, okay, great. Do we have any other polls?
One more slide.
Okay. And what would the format you would like it to be? Lunch and learn or breakfast? Is that the last one? We still got more votes coming in. Okay. GP, do you have what you need?
Thanks. Yeah, there's one more poll about today's webcast.
Okay, great. Of course. Please provide your rating for today's webcast. I thought it was very useful and very informative. So. All right. Does anyone have any other questions outside of the webcast about the community, anything? Okay. Well, I want to thank you all and wish you a very good, successful new year to everyone. And please be on the lookout for announcements for the February webcast. And we have also created a mailbox for our user community. If anybody wants to post any questions, comments, anything like that outside of the community, the email address is caapmcommunity@gmail.com. And that's also posted on the community webpage as well, if you need that. So feel free to reach out to us via that email about any questions you might have. And I hope you have a rest of